Alrighty. All right, Amanda, I'm glad you were able to join. I resent the email. We were literally just talking about how we get so many emails, especially like every single time somebody sends in like a voice thread or something. So
Oh my
it
gosh.
happens.
Thank you.
Mhm. All right. So what we were also discussing right now was that for some reason, when you go to submit for this assignment, it says like something's already submitted, even though like I don't remember submitting.
No, I accidentally put like group 5 and
Oh,
6. So I sent her an email and said, I'm sorry, I put it in the wrong place. Just totally ignore that. And she said, no problem.
okay, cool. Yeah, we were like wondering a secret group member just turned. All right. So I guess the way that we can go about for this week's group activity is we can just kind of go through like the notes that we went through. So we can start off with reality therapy, then I'll go over Adlerian, and then we can finish off with person-centered, and then we can talk about our preferred theoretical approach.
Sounds good.
All
Mhm.
right. So let's talk about reality therapy.
Get my stuff. Sorry. Um, do you just want me to talk about the article or you just want me to talk about what reality theory is
I guess from the
first?
article, since that's like where the bulk of the research came from, so that way we can kind of see what you learned from it, what was new, I guess.
Um, so the article that I found was called The Effectiveness of Reality Theory, Therapy and Group Counseling to Achieve Student Motivation for Academic Well-Being. So I thought that was interesting, kind of like up our alley. And then the concept and founder is William Glasner. And so the underlying theory of reality theory is choice theory, which is also by Glasner. And choice theory just emphasizes personal responsibility, individual choice, and that all human behavior is driven by to satisfy 5 basic needs. And so, no matter what the presenting problem is, um, all clients seen in counseling are struggling unsuccessfully to meet one or more of those basic needs. So there's 4 psychological needs that need to be met, and they're belonging, power, freedom, and fun. And then there's one physiological need, which is survival. And so some techniques and interventions, you evaluate the current behavior, and then the helper steers client away from focusing on the past. And then they identify unmet needs, which would be one of the 5. And then they develop effective strategies and setting goals to unfill those met needs. And then they make responsible decisions to meet those goals. And then the effectiveness and benefits, there's improved confidence and higher self-esteem, acquisition of better coping skills, greater sense of self-control, and improved relationship and increased hope. However, some considerations when thinking about reality theory is it's limited to the present and doesn't aim to understand past conflicts. And it doesn't recognize the significance of the unconscious. And maybe there may be a potential to impose the counselor's own views. And it can oversimplify complex issues, and it doesn't take into account mental health or mental illness, actually.
Nice.
So, yeah.
Cool. I've honestly never really like read too much into reality therapy. I've only ever kind of like brushed through it in like previous courses. I've just kind of like read the gist of it and never like got into like the full details of it. And what
Mhm.
kind of stands out to me is that the helper steers client away from focusing on the past, which differs a lot from Adlerian therapy. Um, so going into Adlerian therapy, the article that I found is Adlerian Therapy, a General Review. So it was developed by Alfred Adler. He was a colleague of Sigmund Freud, and they studied together, they worked together, but they kind of differed in their ideologies. So he differed from Sigmund Freud as Adlerian therapy focuses on behavior at the conscious level rather than the unconscious. And the underlying theory for this therapy is that of personality theory of individual psychology. So basically, it focuses on the idea that every individual starts off with innate feelings, such as feelings of inferiority, vulnerability, and inadequacy. And that becomes a driving force for individuals to gain motivation to develop and achieve success in their lives. It also emphasizes the purposefulness of behavior, as well as behavior as is influenced by the individual's interactions with others and how it's goal oriented. So, kind of like put simply, Adlerian therapy focuses on like the past to help explain the present and help make connections to the future. And that's why like I really like Adlerian therapy, as you guys will see later in my preferred theoretical approach. Like for some reason, Adlerian therapy has always like called my attention. Because I feel like it does make sense to kind of like look at the past to kind of help explain current behavior patterns or current issues that you're facing. And then you can kind of like recognize those behaviors, make connections, and then help make predictions for the future. Help align yourself with like goals and motivations to get you to where you want to be. So, some more principles and focus. It concentrates on how an individual perceives and interprets their past in relation to the present reality. Its holistic and systematic approach helps to conceptualize a client's issue. So I feel like with Adlerian therapy, it really like breaks it down like a lot, like more so compared to like reality therapy, in my opinion, because reality therapy, like it said, it's limited in that it only looks at the present. So, here, Adlerian therapy emphasizes that individuals are motivated by social relationships, and there's that innate drive that is motivated by an individual's need to feel like they belong. It focuses on human nature and how one's past is perceived and interpreted to explain current behavior. It examines early experiences and family dynamics to gain more insight and understanding into an individual's motivations and life goals. And one of the most important goals of Adlerian therapy is that individuals become contributing members of society. So it was really interesting to look at the techniques and interventions in the article. There's interpretation, encouragement, spit in the client's soup, avoiding the tar baby, paradoxical intention, acting as if, push buttons, self-capture, role-playing, homeworks, and dream analysis are all techniques and interventions that can be used in Adlerian therapy to develop the client's social interests and sense of belonging. So all of those names are just different types of techniques and interventions that the helper can use with their client to help them make those connections between their past and their present. It also helps clients dive deeper into their early experiences, family dynamics, motivations, and life goals so that they can develop a self-understanding and make new choices that can lead them towards achieving those goals that they want to meet. It's building and establishing an effective therapeutic relationships with clients is key, as providing encouragement and working collaboratively to create expectations align with their motivation and goals that will likely lead to success. So there's this part in Adlerian therapy that also aligns with person-centered therapy, where it like emphasizes the importance of like building and establishing that client relationship, that working alliance. Also, analyzing an individual's past patterns of behavior can help to explain current issues that they are experiencing, which leads to self-reflection and identifying such maladaptive behaviors and replacing them with healthier coping strategies. So, Adlerian therapy has a couple stages. There's engagement, assessment, insight, and reorientation. So, for engagement, it's kind of like the principle of person-centered therapy, where you're establishing a therapeutic relationship with your client that is both trusting and collaborative. For assessment, you're basically learning more about your client. So it's going beyond the surface level, kind of understanding their early experiences, maybe childhood memories, family dynamics, what motivates them, and what their life goals are. And then for insight, you're going to help the client gain insight into their own behaviors. So now that you know about their like past and their early experiences and stuff, you're able to help the client gain that insight within themselves as well to help them explain their own behaviors right now in the present. And then for reorientation, it's basically developing these new behaviors, choices, habits, and skills to support the client's growth. So a lot goes into Adlerian therapy, which is why research has shown that there's a lot of like effectiveness and benefits to it. For example, it's effective in reducing levels of anxiety and hopelessness. That was like one thing that really stood out to me in the article because like I had never like seen it linked to that. It's also very helpful for treating a variety of mental health conditions. It could be used alongside other therapies like family therapies and play therapies. And it's highly effective with working with like a lot of populations like children, adolescents, adults, and you can use it in both individual and group therapy. And then lastly, as with everything, there are some considerations. Adlerian therapy is effective and has many benefits, but it might not be suitable for those who like are not willing to confront painful memories. Because again, Adlerian therapy, it deals with the past. So if the client is not willing to kind of like open up and talk about like a painful memory, something that they wish like to forget, it's going to be kind of hard to get them to where they want to be if they're unwilling to open up. Also, the client must be open to change and open to critically assess their current behaviors and lifestyle. So Adlerian therapy is not going to be successful if the client doesn't realize what the issue is. They need to have that self-reflection and be able to make those connections with the helper's guidance in order for Adlerian therapy to be successful. And lastly, more research still needs to be done. But as of now, research has supported that it is effective, but there could always be more. And that's pretty much everything that I got from the article.
All right. So me and
I
Jess,
read your article. It was good.
Yeah, it was very like,
I can see how he was inspired by his childhood. I didn't really know that about him, that he couldn't walk till he was 4 and that he had trouble stuttering, considered himself ugly, and pretty much had an unhappy childhood. So, thought that was interesting. I could see where he got
the
his vision for
inspiration.
this.
I like how you said the past and the present and then the future. I think I read that in, I think it was Gladding that I read that in. There was a piece of it in the chapter, but it was very similar to what um that one is focused on. It's like if you don't fix the past, your present's still gonna kind of be, what it is, and then your future is just, you know,
Yeah, it just takes a lot to like look at. You need to look at a lot of stuff in order to like make sense of what's going on.
yeah. Okay, so we'll go ahead and move into person-centered. I know me and Jess both shared this one, so I'm gonna do a little piece and then she'll do some pieces on each part. So kind of just to start us off on just a little bit of a summary on the article that we did. It was a case where they followed about, I think it was about 56 clients who had experienced suicidal thoughts, and they received person-centered therapy over a course of about 20 sessions. It looked at like 3 main areas, which was authenticity, well-being, and then psychological distress. And they did find that clients showed significant increases in the authenticity and well-being and a significant decrease in psychological distress. But this really kind of occurred after about 15 sessions. So that was something from the article that kind of stood out a little bit, is that it wasn't until after those 15 sessions that I guess it kind of became clear that it was helping some of the clients. So when it comes to the person-centered therapy, it was, based off of the Carl Rogers, and it was presented to clients that were, having suicidal thoughts or struggling with those suicidal thoughts. The study focused on how supportive, non-judgmental relationships could actually help individuals reconnect with themselves, because Rogers believes that people can grow when accepted and understood is central to this approach.
Yes, I'm gonna
Yes, you
add
want to jump
mine.
in?
Yes,
Mhm.
yes. So exactly what you said. When I was looking at the article, I did notice it took like 20 sessions for them to finally see a breakthrough. So I think that's why they said like at number 15, like that's where they saw like that person-centered therapy was actually helping them. I know somewhere in the article they lost some of the clients, not due to suicide, but like
Right.
due to illnesses or whatever. So, but in a nutshell, it was proven to help. And I thought it was really interesting when I read this article, because usually when I think of person-centered therapy, I think of non severe cases. So when I saw the like person-centered therapy being connected with suicidal ideation, I was like, whoa, like I I don't know if I would like take that approach with suicidal ideation clients, but it was proven to improve the client's emotional distress and improve authenticity and forget the, and well-being. But under that one, I think we're discussing the concept and founder, right?
Mhm.
Okay, so I'm just gonna refer to my notes before I forget. So one idea that underlines the person-centered therapy approach is Rogers' belief that psychological distress is due to an incongruence between the person's self-concept and reality as they experience it. A person who lacks in this congruence is said to be authentic, and one of the goals of this study is to determine the level of authenticity as a marker of well-being of the patient. And then I wrote also that one of the most key features of person-centered therapy is the unconditional positive regard that the counselor has to present to the client. This encapsulates the foundation for a self space in which the group can function. So this, every time I think of person-centered therapy, I also think of like having like true empathy. And it's, I always go over it with my students, like there's a difference between empathy and sympathy, and like empathy is like really like being authentic with yourself and with the client, and where there's like no filters, and that way your client feels like, oh, this person genuinely like wants to help me, cares about me, and it's not like a simple like get well get well soon type thing. So that's all I have to say about that one right now.
Okay, so then we'll move into the principles and focus. So for this one, the counselors didn't focus on solving the problems. What they did was they actually just created a safe or a space where clients could express themselves without fear of being judged. The focus was on helping the client feel more like themselves again. And then over time, they started to feel more grounded, open, and emotionally balanced.
Yes, and so based on the theory propounded by Rogers, this will lead to an increase of their well-being and improve psychological distress.
Okay, so for techniques and interventions, there really were no formal strategies or homework with this. Counselors used reflective listening, gave clients a space to talk, and then responded with warmth and empathy. Like that word keeps coming up a lot with that empathy. And then the relationship itself was the main tool. There really wasn't any techniques. It was just about building that relationship.
Yeah, it was building that relationship, and then they also used like the word confront in the article, and I was like, whoa, like, and when I think of confront, I think of this other course that we took. I think it was in the pre-practicum, and it was like it sounds harsher than what it actually is here in person-centered therapy in this article. So one of the techniques that can be used by a facilitator is to confront the individual group members on congruences that exist in their beliefs. So confronting is when a facilitator helps the group members observe and talk through the disconnect between their experience and their beliefs. By helping them see this, they will be able to shed congruencies that prevent them from experiencing authenticity. So, like I said, it is unfortunate that the word confront is used here in this context because an expert facilitator will be able to perform the confrontation in a manner that does not spoil the unconditional regard, and hence does not impede the continued expression of the group members, but is able to elicit the positive response of aligning the client's self-concept with their experience. So yes.
Okay, and then moving on to the effectiveness and benefits. The clients in this study reported an increase in emotional well-being and felt more connected to who they were. They also experienced a stronger sense of identity and clarity, and the therapy helped reduce emotional distress without needing a structured plan or a checklist.
Exactly. And then we saw like how I had mentioned earlier, like at least after the 15th session there, they were able to determine that person-centered therapy actually did help clients who had suicidal ideation.
And so, of course, there are considerations with any of them. So with this one, this kind of therapy requires counselor who are comfortable sitting with difficult emotions in silence a lot of times. And also, it may not be enough for someone who needs a crisis plan, of course, because like we were saying, it was kind of to see it tied to, you know, suicidal thoughts and ideation and stuff like that. You know, of course, if there's someone that needs a fast acting plan, this would not be enough for them immediately. And then the article also points out that being emotionally present and trustworthy matters more than doing something specific.
Yes, exactly. Like all of those things that you mentioned, and then um I think it was important. Like when I first read it, I was like, how, like when I think of suicidal ideation, I'm like the like to me that's just like, oh, that's an extreme case, like we need to act fast type thing. But I think what got me thinking when reading this article, I was like, maybe some people just really needed to be heard, like on that level of not being judged or not having like a plan, so to speak, and trying to fit them in like a table chart or something. That's something that I really like about the Rogerian, the person-centered therapy, is that you kind you're in a judgment-free zone from the get-go, and the facilitator is able to build like that genuine like relationship, and I think that's why they had such a success. But like you did mention, in some cases I could imagine where suicidal ideation is maybe too severe for some, and where this may not be able to like help them necessarily at that moment because they're just past that.
Right.
Yeah, I think when you were saying, 15 sessions,
Mhm.
and I was reading that it takes an average of at least 5 sessions of therapy to begin to see that psychological growth, and then 15 sessions of therapy to see changes in statistical significance. And I think that's because the client gradually begins to see the therapist as somebody they can trust, and that's sees that therapist's unconditional positive regard and empathy. So kind of needs to build a sense of safety and trust with the therapist first. I think everything is gradual with this therapy. And just, I think you're right. I think if it's like an emergency situation with a suicide thing, that you would probably want to get some help like right then.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, Amanda, I agree with you because it's like every client is different. Maybe like one client can be really comfortable with the therapist in the first session and they're
Mhm.
good, they open up. But others might take a lot of sessions, and yeah, so I think it's like it really just depends on the client as well.
I
Yeah.
really kind of like this one though, because I try to connect it like to how I can use it in everyday life and stuff. And we have a lot of kids that I noticed like this year, like they would say things like, I want to die or I'm ready to die or something like that. But it's not, you know, of course you have to do a protocol on them because they said it and they put it on paper or something, but they weren't actually to the point where they were ready to do it, where we needed like a crisis team like right there or something. So this was very kind of like a meaningful article to me, because I feel like in with elementary kids that are kind of going through that, like when they start to have those thoughts and things, that relationship and just building something with that student to help them to really even understand who they are is way more powerful than trying to fix them with something.
Yeah, I work with high schoolers, and this is all reminding me about one of my students that I had this past school year. He was kind of a difficult student. A lot of teachers that had him, they didn't like him. They just saw him as like a troublemaker and things like that. And you know how it goes, how sometimes like you hear that a student is a troublemaker and you automatically like, yeah, this is a troublemaker. I'm not gonna look at them any other way. Well, I had him, and all he really needed was just somebody to sit down with him, talk to him, and really get to know him. And I never had issues with him. He just really needed somebody to talk to, somebody that he could like, open up to, and I could really like see how I can help him beyond just academics.
Mhm.
So I saw him grow throughout the school year, which was really good to see because I remember at the beginning he would slack off a lot. He didn't have like that motivation to get his stuff done. But then once I kind of like talked to him, saw what was going on, and we were able to like get him the help that he needed, he was able to improve and pass. So I was really glad to see that happen. So I'm really hoping he does well the coming school year.
Yeah.
I think this is a good, therapy for school counseling. I think there will be some of those kids where it may not be the most appropriate approach for all of them, particularly those that need more structure or direct intervention. I know I've had some of those with my emotionally disturbed kids. So, but in which case, maybe a bit of reality therapy would help in that.
All right, so let's go ahead and move on to the major findings of the articles. We all had a couple bullet points to share. All right, so reality therapy.
Reality therapy. So it was, hold on, I can't see it. I'm gonna turn it up. Screen that was loud. So it was a study to examine the effectiveness of reality therapy and group counseling as a means to improve motivation for achievement among students. So, there was a higher level of academic motivation in the treatment group versus the controlled group. Peers also influence personal attitudes and behavior. I think we see that all the time, that, they want to do what their friends are doing. But reality therapy groups can provide a strong motivational drive through close relationships formed in the therapy group. So when the group cohesiveness is strong, students are more motivated to achieve, and which directly impacts their academic performance. And the study did find that the element of interaction between the group members contributed to increased achievement motivation levels.
Nice. All right, for Adlerian therapy, basically what stood out to me was understanding the process of it, the 4 stages of engagement, assessment, insight, and reorientation, which kind of like how I mentioned earlier, with the engagement part, it really does align with that of person-centered therapy, which goes to show just how important it is to build a working alliance, an effective therapeutic relationship with your clients. Because if you're unable to do that, I don't think there's a way to help them. You need to be able to establish a relationship, maintain it, so that way they're able to open up and feel, safe. They know that they're not going to be judged, and they can open up, and you're able to like gain insight, information, and help them out as best as possible. There's that emphasis on early experiences, family dynamics, for the individual to gain insight and understanding into their motivations and life goals. So one of the things that Adlerian therapy does is it helps the person self-reflect and realize what motivates them and what their life goals are like internally. But sometimes they just need the help and the guidance of the helper to kind of get that out of them. And again, it goes back to what I've been saying, how it's connecting both past, present, and then future. One of the most important goals is that individuals become contributing members of society. In other words, they're not doing any like maladaptive behaviors. Anything that they do that's like maladaptive or that's causing issues in their life, through Adlerian therapy, they're able to replace that with healthier coping strategies and then, be healthy. Again, helpful for treating a variety of mental health conditions, with one of the major findings that Adlerian therapy helps to reduce levels of anxiety and hopelessness. And what I really liked about it is that it's highly effective with kids, adolescents, adults, and in both individual and group therapy.
Alrighty, the major findings of the article for person-centered therapy. Clients dealing with suicidal thoughts showed long-term increases in authenticity, emotional stability, and self-acceptance. The therapy also helped them feel more connected to who they were or who they are, and reduce their emotional distress. Change actually came, again, like I said before, from the relationship itself, and not really from tools or structured plans or techniques that were done. It was just basically from building that relationship and a strong connection. The consistent presence and acceptance from the counselor helped the client to actually begin to heal through that relationship. But again, it's best suited for clients who aren't in immediate crisis, but still need that deep emotional support. Jess, you want to finish the last ones on this one?
Yes, of course.
Okay.
I have down in therapy, clients felt secure, listened to, and valued. Treatment allowed for self representation. Clients felt in control and independent in their relationship, and mutual acceptance and respect were important ingredients for therapeutic success. And like you did mention, this approach is usually done. And it said it in the article too. I thought it was interesting. It's usually suited for the worried well. And it got me thinking, like, what is the worried well? But then upon looking it up, it just said like people who already like they don't have a lot of like mental issues or psychological issues, but like they feel that through therapy they can improve. So the way I saw it was like, okay, person-centered therapy is usually like aimed towards the worried well, where people don't necessarily need it, but it helps them and like it builds up their self-esteem, and so they leave better than how they came in. But I thought it was very interesting that this article dealing with suicide ideation, that it did improve, and it just proves that person-centered therapy can be used for more serious psychological issues.
All right, so the last part of the part one of our group activity was choosing our preferred theoretical approach. So kind of looking at like what we talked about. I love how like everyone said person-centered therapy except me. So I'd love to hear what y'all have to say, and then I'll go ahead and talk about my rationale.
Gotcha. Okay, so I'll go ahead and start. So of course, of the three, that person-centered is the one that I connect the most with. I guess it just kind of fits like me, and that's kind of what I connected with. Like, it's not that I have to come in there with like techniques and all this stuff that you're going to do. Like, I literally just I need to show up for you. That's more of what it is for me, and that I connect that a lot with like the elementary kids that I work with, because that's what they need. Like they need somebody to be there for them. They need somebody that, is going to listen to them and not immediately try to control everything that they're saying or anything like that. And so some of the things that, it just, like I said, it just kind of fits right with me. It's about building that trust, showing empathy, creating that safe space for kids, or people in general. But like I said, I connect to a lot of the kids, where they can just come in and they can be themselves. They can talk to me about things. They can open up to me. But I also really kind of like that. For me, person-centered therapy is more about the change happening when the person is ready themselves. So like they can come into my office and I can be like, look, you need to do this, this, this. But if you're not ready for it, it doesn't matter what I say. It doesn't matter if something is easy that I'm telling you to do, like go sharpen your pencil. Like if you're not ready to do it, you're just not going to do it. So this one to me is really more of like not pushing or pressuring. It's just building that relationship and building an open space for somebody to be able to decide, hey, I think I'm kind of ready to make this change, and I'm not really being told to do it, but it's through a conversation, through a safe space, that all that change is actually happening. And I feel like the more a person changes when they want to change, they're going to keep that change. It's not going to be something like as soon as that person's no longer, I can't go talk to them, I'm just going to, go back to myself because they're the ones that told me to do it. So that's why that one to me just, it just kind of fits good for me.
Yeah, I really like how you highlight that, how a person is not going to change unless they themselves realize that they need to change. That's like so good.
I think I like it because, and I'm also elementary, that they're constantly being used to somebody telling them what to do this, do that. And so this can kind of give them some ownership over their lives and some control. So I think it can help them feel more empowered to make their own choices and take responsibility for their actions. So we're kind of giving them the reins, like they lead the counseling session. Um, and also, I think it's important for them to have a trusting adult that's going to actually listen to what they say and not just tell them what to do. So, yeah, I think that's why I'm just drawn to this one as of right now. I think I'd probably use a mixture of some, some kids might need a different type, but person-centered therapy, or I think of it as student-centered therapy, is probably one that I'm drawn to the most.
Yeah, I like how you said like these kids are just so used to like them like for you to tell them like what to do. And then like that's gonna magically solve everything. And it's like coming from a high school perspective, I can see that in my students. They're like, well, what do I need to do? How do I pick it up? Like their grades and everything, or whatever. And it's like, no, like chill, like yeah, it's definitely building on to a relationship. And I love person-centered, like how Jessica said, just because you don't need to remember like all these tables and charts and like it's just it's you, and I'm not looking to change you unless you feel that you're ready for it. And it's just more than anything, you being that good friend for them, just being like a good listener, and like leading them eventually, like once you build a relationship, like having them make that self like actualization, I think it's called. And then they're like, oh, okay, I need to do this and whatever. And like it's that aha moment. And I think that's the goal in like psychotherapy, for them to realize it. Because like with students, how you said, Amanda, like they want us to have the answers to fix their problems, and it's not like that. It has to be like through them, and it has to be like them making that realization and being like, I need to do this. But they wouldn't have done that if you had not been there for them, listen to them, question their incongruencies and all that. So I love the person-centered therapy just because it's, oh, like I don't have to worry. I can just be me. I could just be like a good listener. I can just be there for them genuinely. And I love that. I love like connecting with people on that. And as a teacher, I wish I could connect with my students better, but due to time and admin always coming in and just everything, it's hard. It's definitely hard as a teacher to like incorporate all this because you're a teacher and you have something to teach. And you can't necessarily get to sit with them like they want that. They don't even care they just want to tell you about their day, who they're dating, and what happened during fourth period and whatever. And yeah, I really like person-centered therapy because it's a no-brainer for me. Like I can't mess this up. Like but yeah.
Yeah, I love that. And I love how you mentioned how like, yeah, students just want somebody to be there to listen to them, which is why like my kids, like they love when we have like the catch-up days, the free days or whatever,
Yeah.
because they're like doing their work and I'm like walking around monitoring and like we actually have like these conversations. Like we're not just talking about like the content that we went over, but like I'm actually like, hey, what plans do you have for the weekend? Or like what's new? You know, like I get to like know my students a little better on days like that. And like I really do want to incorporate something like that this upcoming school year. So that way, like it's not just like I'm not seeing you just as a student. I want to see you as a person, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, I really like person-centered therapy, but out of the three, I had to go with Adlerian therapy because again, for me personally, I've always been like into like looking at things from the past that help explain what's going on in the present to help me make predictions for the future. Like that has always been something that's been with me for like ever. Um, and this part of the assignment also reminds me of an assignment I did for a class a couple months ago where we had to pick a theoretical framework. And I remember we had to pick 3 different theories that we would like to use like in combination. And I remember I used person-centered therapy, Adlerian therapy, and cognitive behavioral therapy. So those 3 are like my top. But Adlerian therapy, I'm drawn to it because, like I mentioned here, I like to focus on human nature, gain insight into an individual's past and how it can be perceived and interpreted to help explain present behavior and present issues. What else? I mean, that's like the major reason why I like it. Also because it also incorporates person-centered therapy, like the gist of it, where like you're emphasizing encouragement, you're emphasizing establishing a therapeutic relationship with your client. Because how am I going to be able to gain insight into like early experiences, family dynamics, and things like that if I don't first establish a relationship with my client? So I feel like with that, it still takes some part of person-centered therapy, but in this case, it like expands on it. It adds to it. So I really like this theoretical approach because again, it establishes the effective therapeutic relationship with clients to help them make the necessary changes and to grow. So I would say that it's my preferred theoretical approach because it aligns with my belief system of human nature and the importance of examining an individual's early experiences, family dynamics, to help them gain an understanding into their behavior, make connections between their past and their present, and ultimately guide them towards the life goals that they have in mind. So that's my rationale for Adlerian therapy.
I like Adlerian therapy. It's like my second go-to, like after this. It's because this one's just a no-brainer for me, like the person-centered. But I do totally agree with like everything Adlerian because um like I feel like I'm just like self-diagnosing my family members just because we know them like long term. And so I'm like, it's because in the past this happened to you, and that's why you're like this. And I mean, in my head, I don't like actually tell them this, but that makes perfect sense. And then like I see like where like what they're working towards, and I'm like, it just connects. It's yeah.
Exactly.
It
Like I love making like connections and stuff like that. And sometimes like it's good, sometimes it's bad because then it's like you think of something and then you're like, wait, and then you think back to the past and like it can be messy sometimes.
yeah.
I think that's really good too, because like a lot of, even in young kids, I mean, there's things that they've gone through, and once they build that relationship and they actually, can voice, this happened and this is why, that past is it's a very big deal for a lot of, I mean, for all of us, there's something in our past that has affected the way we do something. And a lot of times as kids, they don't really know how to understand that past, and why am I acting out every single time I walk in here? Well, it's because the first time I walked in, the teacher didn't welcome me, or something like that. I mean, something even as small as that, but I mean, there's way deeper things that have happened in people's past that really affect them too. So I think I like that part of the theory, because I think, if not that you want to dredge up the past, but if you don't heal from the past, you're never going to move past it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's like worded it perfectly.
At least if they can't get past it, at least the counselor can understand kind of the underlying reasons for their behavior.
Yeah.
So,
But yeah, I mean, each of these theories, they're really interesting to learn about. And then that whole extensive list in part 2 was pretty cool to like see
mhm.
all of them. But speaking of part 2, I think we're good on it, to be honest, because I went over it, I think last night or the night before, and I think we have everything. We have all the like
We'll check it
heading.
again, because I did add some things today. I was sorry, I was on the road yesterday,
You're
but
good, no worries.
I added some more stuff in there. I know she said she won't read past like 8 pages, and I think we're at like 8 pages and like 2 lines. So
Okay.
back in and look and make sure before anybody's like, okay, good.
Yeah.
All
I
right.
went through and I listened to her recording again because she did give a lot more information on that. So yeah, I think we're good. I think we've included everything. I think.
Alrighty. So I guess like you guys let me know whenever y'all are done editing the 2 documents so that way I can like download them, save them to the computer, and that way I can upload everything. The video, I also downloaded the PDFs of each of our articles so that way like she can have them because I know she said link or PDF, but just to be safe, I'm gonna
Yeah.
put both.
No.
So yeah, that and then obviously the notes and then the essay. So you guys let me know as soon as we're good to go so I can download and then turn that in. It'll probably be until like the weekend, just in case, we
just in
want to
case.
make some changes and things like that.
I'm pretty sure I'm good with 1 and 2. Like I said, I kind of finished up the part that I added in part 2 a little earlier. That's why I said like double check
Yeah.
before you do anything. So, but I think I'm good on both of them.
Okay, sounds good. Also, what was I gonna say about turning in the attempt that we have? Did she say that she's gonna take off what was turned in?
No.
No, she's just gonna keep it in there so that way we just turn it in and it like
Yeah,
over.
because I mean, it was what I was supposed to turn in, but I put it on the wrong week. So
Mhm.
it didn't have anything to do with this. I said, just
Okay.
ignore it. And she said, no problem.
All right, cool.
Thank goodness.
Alrighty. Well, we made it another week, and next week I'm hoping should be a little chiller. I know that we have a discussion and then the final.
Yes.
So
You have 10 hours to take the final.
that is
How
so
long it is.
intimidating. 10 hours.
I don't know, but
Mm.
hey, but I mean, not to like try to, work myself up, but we have had like, what is it, 5 or 6 hours for each of the other ones, and they haven't been like excruciatingly
Yeah.
long or anything. So I'm hoping it's just like an excess of time, just in case, so you're not like stressing over time.
Yeah, because sometimes the time, oh my gosh,
Tick, 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 tick.
especially when like the internet buffers and it keeps going, and I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Is it just one attempt or two?
I think there's two, I
it's
believe.
Two. Hopefully it's two, because sometimes, things happen and then I have to do it again. But we did it, you guys. We're almost to the end, and we did it. 6 weeks of meetings. It was a pleasure to work with y'all.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hopefully we'll be in another class again soon.
I know I have Amanda coming up for practicum.
Oh, yeah, good.
Oh,
So
You got
next
this.
we have our first practicum meeting already. So
Mhm.
oh,
love
wow.
that for us.
Yeah.
Okay.
But we'll keep you posted so that way y'all can prepare whenever y'all
Yes,
are next.
Definitely. Jess, do you know what your next class is?
I think it's no, I don't. But I got an email saying I'm gonna get the book, like the bright.
Yeah, I
Read.
think mine is human growth and development. So if you have,
Yes,
is
I'll
it
I
be
have
that
there.
that one.
yeah.
I'm
Yes,
gonna be taking practicum and human growth and development.
Okay, cool.
So I guess we'll be
We'll
there.
all be there.
Anyways, we have our group chat to help us out whenever we
Yes.
have
Yeah.
questions and stuff.
yes.
Alrighty, I'm gonna go ahead and stop recording.